final definitive accounting of that, I have to make sure that the public record is complete. So all of this started with my desire to get her emails and the emails of her top aides. That's when we learned she had this unprecedented email arrangement with herself. And thanks to, frankly, some folks in your line of work who did some good journalistic investigation, and thanks in part, I guess, to my colleagues on the committee, we have determined that there's a lot more to her email story than just the completeness of the record. In terms of what I'm interested in, it is doing a good job for those 4 murdered Americans and their families. The classified information, the rest of it is in other people's jurisdiction, and I'm content with that.
Now, and you know this, Clinton says this is all politics, Republicans like yourself trying to hurt her presidential campaign. Here she is in Iowa this week.
I won't get down in the mud with them. I won't play politics with national security or dishonor the memory of those who we lost. I won't pretend that this is anything other than what it is, the same old partisan games we've seen so many times before.
Congressman Gowdy, same old partisan games?
Well, the Inspector General isn't partisan, neither one of them. In fact, they were nominated by President Obama and confirmed by Harry Reid-led Senate. The FBI is not partisan. I get that she's frustrated. Her poll numbers are tanking. Folks who never thought about getting into the race are getting in the race. But she need not blame House Republicans for having her own personal server, for exclusively using private email, for telling us the Sidney Blumenthal emails were unsolicited, and then we later find out that they were not, for telling us there was no classified information, then we later find out that there was, for telling us the public record was complete, and then we find 15 emails she never turned over to the State Department. I get that she's frustrated. Sometimes when people are frustrated, they look in the mirror and they engage in a little bit of self-reflection, and sometimes they lash out and blame non-existent right-wing conspiracies, and apparently she's chosen to do the latter.
Yeah, but let me ask you about the non-existent right-wing conspiracy. I want to show a clip from a video that House Speaker John Boehner, Republican House Speaker John Boehner, put out this week about your investigation.
If Hillary Clinton wants the Benghazi committee to finish their work, she could help them by turning over all of her emails sooner rather than
later. But we're not going away until we get it because it's really important.
Congressman Gowdy, I got to say, it sure looks like a negative campaign commercial.
Well, I haven't seen it. I can tell you this, Chris. We have interviewed 36 witnesses. Not a single one of them has been named Clinton. She hasn't been called before the committee yet. Once she comes before the committee, I suspect people's interest in talking to me is going to dissipate down to being non-existent. We've gotten tens of thousands of pages from other executive branch entities that no other committee of Congress has gotten. So, again, I would just tell you this. Had it not been for this unusual email arrangement that she had with herself, you and I would not be talking this morning. You don't know the name of a single other person we've interviewed as a part of our committee. You haven't seen any of the documents that we've acquired from the executive branch entities. We're trying to run this investigation the way that serious investigations are run. But lo and behold, we find something that all 7 of those other committees that she claims looked into Benghazi never found. So we're going to follow the facts wherever they go, and if that impacts people's perception of her fitness to be commander-in-chief, so be it. I can just tell you this. For the first 3 public hearings, I never mentioned her name.
Well, let me ask you about this, because Clinton's lawyer says that she will testify before your committee on October 22nd, and I'm a little confused. Have you agreed to that date, and have you and the Clinton team agreed on the ground rules for that testimony?
We have agreed on the date, and the ground rules are simple. You're going to stay there until all of the questions are asked and answered with respect to Benghazi and Libya. And part of that is ensuring that the public record is whole and complete, which means we necessarily have to discuss your unusual email practices. But we're going to stay there until all of the questions. If she's going to insist, Chris, that she's only coming once, I'm going to insist that once be fully constructive, which is going to be there for a while.
I understand, and you've made it clear that the mishandling of the classified information is not part of the jurisdiction of your committee. But I want to ask you about something very that Secretary of State John Kerry said this week. Take a look.
Do you think the Chinese and or the Russians are reading your emails?
The answer is it is very likely. It is not without, outside the realm of possibility.
Question, Congressman, when the Inspector General for the Intelligence Committee says that on these private emails was information that came from satellite intercepts, imagery, or electronic surveillance, and you've got John Kerry saying it's very likely that foreign powers are reading his emails, does that raise the stakes here?
Absolutely. It was one of the most reckless decisions that have been made in public service in a long time. And the notion that she did this for convenience, I would just ask you, Chris, convenient for whom? Because it sure as hell hasn't turned out to be convenient for the American people or for our intelligence apparatus. It may have been convenient for her, but it hasn't been convenient for anyone else. I don't know who's accessed her email. I know that members of Congress have not, but I don't know who has.
Finally, as we had mentioned, Clinton's position in all this has evolved. First, she said that there was no classified information. Then she said there was no information that was classified at the time. Now she says there was no information that had been marked as classified at the time. And I know the State Department is checking into whether or not any aides, officials, advisors may have changed the marking on some of those to remove the classified designation. What do you think of the chances that one of her aides will take the fall for this and that will get Hillary Clinton off the hook?
Well, I don't know about getting someone off the hook. If you're talking about criminal exposure, I would leave that up to the Bureau. If you're talking about the court of public opinion, I don't think it ever works when the person in charge blames those under him or her. It's never worked in any position I've ever been in life. She's the Secretary of State. She's the top diplomat for the country, and either she knew or should have known what was being sent to her. So the notion that somebody under you is going to take the fall, metaphorically speaking, I think my fellow citizens would reject that. She wanted to be the Secretary of State. In fact, now she's auditioning for a job even more important than that. With that comes responsibility. And I think my fellow citizens, if that proves to be correct, that classified information was mishandled, I think they will apportion the culpability appropriately.
Professor Gruber, what did you mean when you said they proposed it and that passed because the American people are too stupid to understand the difference?
When I said that, I was in a conference being glib and, quite frankly, trying to make myself seem smart by insulting others.
Are you offering the venue as a defense for saying it or for meaning it?
I'm offering it as a defense for using inappropriate and hurtful and inexcusable language to express.
Well, what did you mean by too stupid to understand the difference?
Congressman, I didn't mean anything about it by it.
Well, you said it. You had to admit it.
I was once again being glib and trying to make myself seem smarter by reflecting.
Well, what did you mean when you said it was a very basic exploitation of the lack of economic understanding of the American voter? What did you mean by that?
Once again, it's another example of my inexcusable arrogance in trying to insult others to make myself seem smarter.
Well, what did you mean when you said the American people don't care about the uninsured?
Once again, that was an overstatement of trying to conjecture on political topics in which I'm not an expert.
Well, you know what, Professor Gruber, I have listened to you all morning talk about your lack of political acumen and that you're not a politician, so therefore you don't know not to call people stupid. Most of the people watching this morning aren't politicians, and they don't call people stupid. And I can't help but note, Professor Gruber, and another one of your quotes, which I'll read to you, that was politically infeasible. You remember saying that?
Yes.
So you do like to factor in the politics from time to time, don't you? And also happen to know, Professor Gruber, that usually you insult the American voter, not the American public. So you do factor in politics, don't you?
I have tried a number of occasions pretended that I know more about politics.
Do you think not being a politician is a defense? And is that your defense this morning? I mean, I know initially you said that you offered these comments at a conference. I think you meant conferences, plural. but you said conference when you went on a very obscure television show and initially apologized for what you said were inappropriate comments. And now today your defense is that you're not a politician. Is that the best you can come up with?
The best I come up with is to really just apologize for an inexcusable.
Well, but I want to know, I mean, the pervasiveness of your quotes is so much that it has to be more than that. It has to be more than just an episodic mistake that you made. Well, here, let me keep going. See if this helps you any. What did you mean when you said you wish that you had been able to be transparent, but you'd rather have the law than not?
Once again, it was my trying to conjecture about a political process in which I'm not an expert.
Well, what did you mean when you said it was written in a tortured way to make sure the CBO didn't score the mandate as a tax?
Once again, it was using inappropriate language to try to sound impressive about something to my colleagues.
You see a trend developing here, Professor Gruber?
I don't understand the question.
It's a lot of stupid quotes you've made. That's the trend.
A lot of
you see them?
Inexcusable quotes. Yeah.
Right. And again, your defense is that you're not a politician. The lack of transparency is a huge political advantage. Well, what does a non-politician do in talking